Hello again. So I know everybody is very excited that we have one more interview because 11 were not enough. We did those last week, and we have Denise Galloni with us today. And we're very lucky to have her here because she's a phenomenal person. And so just to catch everybody up, if in case you missed the first 11 interviews, we're talking about our book, Unleashing Your Soul Level Magic. And this is a book with 12 stories from 12 different women. And they're talking about challenges that they overcame by digging deep and discovering something, in some cases, totally new about themselves that they then grew and are making use of today. And it is one of the coolest collections of stories I've ever read. And in case you're wondering, I have read a lot of books. I'm Corey Walmsley. I'm CEO of Aurora Borealis Publishing. And as I said, this is Denise Galloni, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about herself and what she does. So welcome, Denise.
Hi, Corey. Thanks for having me on. And I'm number 12. I'm last. But it's okay. It's good to be last. It's good to be last.
Yeah.
My name is Denise Galloni, and I am the owner of DG Training Solutions Incorporated, which is a training consulting company. And I focus on helping leaders become better communicators, better leaders, better speakers. This is my third book, actually, the first anthology. So I'm really excited about this. My first book was Find Your Voice, The 5 Keys to Lead and Empower Others. That came out last year. But I'm really excited about this. As Corey showed you, a beautiful cover, Unleashing Your Soul Level Magic. When I first heard about Corey doing it, right away I said, I'm in. I don't know anything about it, but I'm in. So I'm really excited and really glad to be here with you and be included with all these wonderful women. They are amazing stories.
Yeah, they truly are. And of course, your story is amazing as well. So we're very glad to have you as part of it. You said that it was like a hell yeah, as soon as you heard about it. What was it that really made you want to join this group?
Well, I heard about it when you were doing your book launch for Braving the Shore, when you happened to mention it. I've never done an anthology. I have 2 books, but I've never done I thought that might be fun. And then it was you. So
well, there you go.
You, an anthology. I'm like, oh, I'm in. I don't know anything about it, but sign me up, I'm in.
Awesome. Well, very glad to have you here. Because you are an author before joining this book, I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference here. So can you tell us about your book, Finding Your Voice?
Right. So Finding Your Voice, The 5 Keys to Lead and Empower Others, is a leadership book. It's really a book to help you grow as a person, not really to lead your teams. VOICE is an acronym that means vision, overcoming obstacles, inspire, confidence, and enthusiasm. So those are the traits that a leader needs. This book, it took me a long time to write this book. And Corey, you worked with me a lot and you edited the book, and it just took me forever. And I think because I had that analysis paralysis, I kept wanting it to be right, I would change things and change it again, wanting it to be right. So I really struggled with that. Mm-hmm. So I was glad when this book came around, the anthology, I thought, okay, this is a chapter, I can do this. And completely different process there for me. I mean, my book, I looked through past blogs, newsletters, pulling information together to put it all together. Mm-hmm. Where this book, my chapter in the anthology, is more about an event that happened in my life. So really, it was just me recounting the event, writing it down, because I know Corey doesn't like them. I still do paper and pencil, write everything down, writing the whole event down, and then just filling in the blanks and just adding some more information to it. Mm-hmm. So I found it very therapeutic. This is something I've never talked about to anyone. I think I told you that. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty excited to get it down in print and have it in this book. Yeah. And now it's out there for everybody to know.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm really glad you shared your writing process, because it is different trying to do a book that is more for your business, but then this one is more like opening up and telling a little bit about the person behind that.
It was like therapy.
Yeah. It's like therapy, and then everybody gets to know about it.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the story that you shared in Unleashing.
Okay, so the story that I shared was the night my father passed away. And that happened back when I was 10 years old. So I was dating myself here a bit. So it's going to be 50 years that he passed away. So it was a long time ago. It was a crazy night. He was 39 years old. So it was very sudden. My sister was about a year and a half old. So no one expected, in a night that started out normal night, sitting there doing my homework, my dad playing with my sister. And then by the end of the evening, we were a family of 3 and not 4. So my story is about that night, about what happened, and not just what happened, but how it really affected all parts of your life. When you're 10 years old, you have a whole different perspective on things. My first thought was, right after Thanksgiving. So my thought was, what's Christmas going to be like when he's not here? Because my mother didn't work. Like, are we getting gifts? Like, as a kid, that was my first thought. Like, what's going to happen? Do I need to be off school? Like, what's going to happen? But you don't realize how it affects each part of your life moving forward. And even to this day, it's affected my life, not having my dad and leaving at that early age.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting to look back on something and think about how it has affected us. And I think that's something very interesting about being a grown-up, is that we can look back and say, oh, here's what I was thinking then, but now I can see all these little pinpoints along the way of where that impacted me and what that did, and how maybe I took a different route because of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I became more introverted because as a family, we went through a lot of changes, of course. My mother wasn't working at the time. This was back in the early 70s. There weren't any pension plans, 401ks. He didn't have life insurance. He was just too young. We didn't have any of that. It was a whole different time then. So just maneuvering that and trying to make ends meet, and now all of a sudden she's a widow with 2 little girls with a baby. Like, what my sister had problems and a baby. So I became very introverted because we didn't have a lot of money, and at one point we lived in a very nice community that had a lot of money. So we had people that had a mother and father that were both professionals, doctors, attorneys, and here's us. So that really I became an introvert. I talk about all the time when I speak in front of groups that I was the most quietest girl in my class, my senior class. People don't believe it, but it is true. That all stemmed from that. I didn't have any self-confidence. So that stemmed from that. And then even to this day, like, things I think, oh, if my dad was here, like, what he could advise me something, like, what can I do? I have a lot of family issues going on. Like, oh, I wish he was here. So he could tell me, like, what should I do? Should I do this? What should I do? What road should I take? So it really does affect everything.
Yeah. Yeah. On many different levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting. One of the things that I was wondering is, if you could, let's say that we have time machines, because I love imagining that kind of stuff. So if you had a time machine and you could go back and talk to little Denise, like, what would you tell her? What would you talk to her about to help her grow into the person that she's meant to be?
Yeah, everything will work out. You have the strength, everything will work out. Just do the best that you can and just keep pushing forward. And it's tough. Things will be, and life is tough. We all know life is tough. Life throws all kinds of things at you. I think I was better prepared as growing up. So when these things happen to me, like my friends, when things would happen, they would just fall apart. I'm like, okay, let's just calm down. I just go into mode, like, okay, let's just do this.
Yeah.
And even I tease my husband now when something happens, he panics. I'm like, okay, just calm down now. Just because I'm just like, I had to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, the tools that we gather from events like that. I know one of the other authors had a similar sort of story where she became a widow, and she was talking about, then she became the person that was like, okay, I can help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you don't realize how much, when I look back, when I was writing this story, and again, I really haven't thought about it for a long time.
Yeah.
I sat down and started writing it out. I thought, oh, this did affect like so many parts of my life, even just the milestones. He wasn't there for my graduation. He wasn't there when I got married. He couldn't do all these things. So even in addition to those milestones, there's other things like I would want to ask him, like, did I make the right career choice? Did I do this? Like, what should I do? So there's things you just didn't get a chance to ask. And even now at this point, looking back, I'm thinking, I really would want to know, like, what happened when he was in the military? Or what happened with this when he was growing up? Because as a kid, you don't ask those things. I mean, you ask those things a little bit, but you're not like, oh, like, well, how were you raised? And what did Pap and Grandma do? That you don't ask those things when you're a kid. So all that, like, I never knew.
Yeah. That's really interesting too. I mean, were you able to ask, other family members? Did anybody?
A little bit, but again, as a kid, you don't think that way.
Right.
It's the older that you get that you start thinking about, like, where did I come from? And like, how were things then?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it also gives an opportunity to kind of create your own, I don't want to say create your own history, but kind of say, these are the pieces that I know, and
Right.
to, weave that together. And yeah.
Well, that's true, because being so young, I look at things and I have these memories. I'm thinking, is it a memory, or is it I looked at a picture and it's a memory in my head that I made up?
Yeah.
Because it's just been so long, you just don't know.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. So, as a professional today, you mentioned about how it's the garage door's opening underneath me, if you can hear that. You mentioned about how that's impacted you because you were shy and you've had to overcome that. What are some of the ways that you've worked to, become a speaker trainer, and, of all things, the person
Right.
who's the shyest in the class is now training people to speak?
Right. Isn't that crazy? I went to a class reunion years ago, and everyone was asking me, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I told them, I said, "What? Really? You have a TV show? Like, you talk in front of people like you?" That's right.
Yeah.
I just think years of getting out into the workforce and being overlooked for things. Like when
Mhm.
you're quiet, and when you're a woman and you're quiet, reserved, people think you don't know what you're talking about,
Mhm.
or you're just quiet because you can't answer the questions. They don't realize that you're quiet because you just don't know what to say, or just you don't have the courage just to open your mouth and say something because you're
Mhm.
afraid you're going to be wrong.
Yeah.
So it took years of that, doing that. And finally, I started coming on my shell little by little. I joined Toastmasters, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
Early in my career, that helped a lot. And then I just kept pushing. I was like, okay, so I'm going to get my master's degree. What do I want to do? Okay, I want to be a professional trainer. Okay, I need to speak in front of people. Okay, how's that going to work? Let's join Toastmasters and let's try it out.
Yeah.
It wasn't an easy transition. I look back at some of those old speeches I did, and I just cringe and think, oh my gosh, that could be on America's Funniest Home Videos. So it was definitely a progression to where I am now. So
Yeah.
when I look at people and they have issues with speaking in front of people, and I don't mean someone going out in front of a stage and speaking like I do. I don't mean that at all. I mean, even just in a meeting, putting up your hand and feeling like I could give my input. I can answer these questions.
Mhm.
There isn't anything that I haven't gone through. I mean, so I can help about anyone with any of those issues because I've done it.
Mhm.
I went from not saying a word to speaking in front of people, having a TV show, going out and interviewing people live sometimes. Uh, that's just crazy for me to think about how far I've come. So anything's possible. And even this book, Unleashing Your Soul Level Magic, it just shows you that people have overcome a lot of things, and anything is possible if you believe in yourself. And
Yeah.
don't count on others to believe on you. I think you have to believe on yourself. And that's when you go far.
Yeah. And I imagine that's tough for a lot of people to believe in
Sure it
ourselves.
is.
You mentioned even about this kind of connects with what I was actually thinking about, was how people are afraid to raise their hand and to speak because they're afraid they'll be wrong. And I think that that also feeds into the not believing in yourself piece.
Right. You have to believe in yourself. And there'll be times you'll be wrong.
Mhm.
None of us are perfect. We're wrong. There's times when I'm speaking in front of a group and does anyone have a question? Someone will ask me some crazy question. I have no idea like where it came from. And I don't know the answer. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens. But you just have to say, I don't know the answer. I'll get the answer. I'll find out, but I don't know it. But I think we really have to have that confidence inside. Sometimes if you're in a male-dominated industry, it's a little harder because there's a
Mhm.
lot of men, and sometimes they overshadow because they're loud, they're boisterous. And if you're quiet and kind of reserved, like you and I are most of the time, not we're doing that, but most of the time, it is hard. Sometimes you kind of get pushed aside and forgot about.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I know it's, as you said, I don't think anybody else knows this, but I'm quiet.
Right,
um,
right.
and it is tough because every once in a while you do get that little thing like, oh my God, if I say something and it's wrong, how is that going to reflect on, everything that I do? And I think it is nice to have people step up and say, it's okay. So I'm
Okay
really,
to be wrong.
yeah.
It's okay to be wrong. And when I look at you, Corey, how far you've come since we first met.
Oh, I know.
I think we both have just made such an incredible journey since we first. I don't even know how many years it's been. It's been a lot of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we actually met back when I started freelancing. I started out freelance writing and editing
Right. I think
in
that's when it was.
2016.
That sounds about right. I started my business in 2014, so that sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, it's something that I've had to learn myself too, coming from a corporate world where you are taught that if you are wrong, if you are so wrong on so many levels, and being able to go, you know what, it's okay. I was wrong on that and I'm going to fix it. Or I was wrong on that, or I didn't understand, and it'll be okay. We'll move on.
That's right, right. Because we all make mistakes. So I've been wrong before. I've been wrong standing in front of a whole room full of people. I've said something and people are like, oh, that's not right. It happens. You just have to, again, move, accept it, acknowledge it, and just move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, and again, we doubt ourselves a lot. I think as women, sometimes we doubt ourselves. And when people try to give us credit, we say, oh, it's no big deal. You read a book? Oh, yeah, it's no big deal. No big deal. You have a TV show? Yeah, anyone could get that. That's really not a big deal. Because you've heard me say that. And we do. We downplay things. Yeah. So I think it's something that we have to stop doing and just accept who we are and all these amazing things we've accomplished.
Yeah, and celebrate. Definitely
celebrate, right?
Steps. Yeah. This is a very cool book, and to have a story in this is wonderful. So definitely celebrating all the authors of this. I'm really glad that we get to have conversations like this too, because I hope that people are watching and they're saying, I felt that way before too. And I'm really glad that you said that, because that helps, it doesn't cure my whole, imposter syndrome, or it doesn't cure my issues with thinking I'm going to be wrong, but it definitely helps to say it's okay. And
it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay, right? And I think too, but participating in this anthology, if you've never written a book, this is a nice way to kind of dip your toes in a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think that's great. So I just encourage anyone to get out there and just write. And maybe you're not ready to write a book, but just write your thoughts down so you have something ready. I did blogs for years and I had them aside. When I went to write my book, I pulled some of those out. So I had some of that material. So repurpose some of the things that you have. We all have a wealth of knowledge, whether it's professional or something personal, and we could offer a lot. So I think you need to get out there again, accept you're this amazing person and write about it, or write about it and put it aside until you're ready, and then talk to Corey and she'll pull it out of you.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, what would you suggest to people? So I feel like you're just reading my mind now.
I know. And we didn't talk before this, really. It's a great experience. Again, if you're not ready to write a whole book, an anthology is a great way to do it. It's just a chapter. Mm-hmm. And I think it was 1,500 words. I don't remember how many words it was, like 1,500 words, somewhere around there, 1,300 words, somewhere around there. And that's not a lot. It seems like a lot. That's not a lot of words, especially if you're talking about something that happened. Because you're just telling a friend. So you're just sitting down and just writing out just as you're telling a friend. So it's a great way to get yourself out there. And having a book gives you a lot of credibility.
Yes, it does.
So it gives you a lot of credibility.
Yeah. And it's funny because, again, those of us who have done the books already, it's like, oh, it's no big deal. But other people looking at that, they love it. They think, okay, you are standing behind your word. You put it in print. Like, this is going to be around for a long time. I can't just go in and delete this and, oops, didn't mean to say that. It's going to be here for a long time, and it's going to be able to impact people. So it's wonderful that people can kind of dip their toe in, as you were saying, and do just a chapter.
Because it's scary. It's scary to put yourself out there sometimes.
Yeah, it can be.
You're not sure how people are going to react to it. So when I was writing my first book, I thought, well, how are people going to react to it? Like, my first thought was, what do I have to say to anybody? Like, why am I an expert? That's the first thing we ask is, like, who am I? Why am I an expert? And we're all experts. We have to accept that. I was on a call, a networking thing, and someone asked, there's probably maybe 20, 25 people on the call. They said, how many of you are an expert in your field? And maybe 3 hands went up. 3 of these women's hands went up. I put mine up. Yeah. And she said, all of you, your hand should go up, because we're all experts in what we do. We have all this knowledge. And it's a shame to keep it balled up inside you.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. They think they have to be on national TV or, super famous to be able to be an expert.
Right.
Yeah. That's a great message. So I'm curious, because you have written now you've written several books. Are there more books? What's the next step?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to write another business book. I'm not really sure.
Mm.
Maybe a fiction. I talked to you a while about writing a children's book, which is kind of funny because I don't have any children. But
Mm.
it's just idea popped in my head when I couldn't sleep at 2 o'clock one night. So it's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not right now. I have a lot going on now with my business and my TV show. So not right. I don't think right now, but who knows? Next week I could be calling you and say, hey, Corey, I got this idea.
Those are the best kind of calls.
Yeah, I've got this idea. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to talk about your TV show, so I'm glad you brought us back to that. It's kind of changed over the years too, but as with everything else, it's a piece of what you're doing, and it works so well with what you do. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now with the show and like kind of how it got to that point.
Okay, so right now my show is called Empowering You. It is on BPTV, which is a public access channel here in Bethel Park that's shown in all the surrounding areas. It goes to about 30,000 homes in the area. So it's not a huge reach like the ABC, Channel 2, all that, but there's still a pretty big audience, and we have a YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. What I do is I interview someone that can give an inspiring, empowering message, someone that has a business maybe, and they talk about how they started, how they began, because there's a lot of people out there that want information. A lot of people, I'm blessed to have a lot of people that I know I got in my life. So I can rely on a lot of people to call people and say, hey, can you come on my show? Mm-hmm. It really empowers the audience, I think, to hear stories. Because again, someone could be sitting there thinking, oh, I don't know, should I do this? And you hear someone that was almost bankrupt. And now they have 5 car dealerships, 6 car dealerships. I don't know how many car dealerships they have now. I've lost track. But just to hear that story, it gives people the motivation to think, well, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. Yeah. There's nothing more special about me than you or anyone else watching. Anyone can do that. So I really enjoy doing that. It's pretty flexible. This is my second show. The first show is Empowering Women. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of crazy how that came around, talking about just kind of dropped in my lap, but sort of not really. I was being interviewed for another show on BPTV, and I thought it was kind of cool because all the cameras were there in front of me. They came to my house, and we had microphones. I was like, it's kind of cool. So I asked the cameraman, well, how can I do this all the time? This would be really cool to have a show. I didn't know that I was the facility director of the station. So when he asked me, well, what do you want your show to be about? I had no idea. So I just shut my mouth off without thinking. I said, well, I'll get back to you. And then I came up with a theory, again, empowering women, where I would interview women only to provide information to the audience. When I stopped that show in December 2019, 2020, we know what happened. COVID happened. Yeah. So they came back to me and they said, how about if you do a show on Zoom? You could do it around your schedule, and then we can make it into a TV show. So that's what I do now. So I can talk to people anywhere in the world, and they make it into a TV show, and the show's on TV. So it's all about empowerment with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's your big message.
It is empowering. We have to empower. And as women, we have to empower other women. I'm really big on that. The people that I have in my life, in my tribe, so to speak, we're all that way. We don't, tear down other people to make us feel better, talk about other people. We're all very supportive. If something happens, we're all right there.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. That's actually one of the things that I really loved about becoming an entrepreneur, because I had no idea what I was doing.
No one did.
Yeah, everybody stepped up and was like, oh, I'm here, I got you, what do you need? Like answering questions. No question was a silly question. Like, I love that that's the group that I found myself in. And I love that you're sharing that group with the world.
Right. Because that's important, because we don't know these things. When I became an entrepreneur, I quit my job, became an entrepreneur. I didn't know anyone that was an entrepreneur. Like no one in my family was an entrepreneur. I had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
So when I first joined a networking group, and we still laugh about this, me and some of the women, they would ask me these questions. I had no idea. Like, well, do you have a website? No. Well, give me your business card. Yeah, I don't have one. Like, I didn't have any of this stuff because I didn't know.
Right.
So it's great to have the people that have been around for a while say, well, do this and try this. And I can pick up the phone and say, I'm really stuck. Like, what do I do? So it's just wonderful to have. And I think it's so important to give back. And I think you're the same way. I'll always answer any question if someone has a question. It's not, oh, this is just mine. I can't tell you anything because I don't want you to take my business. I'll answer any question I have
Yeah.
within reason, of course. But I'd help anyone, anytime, because I think it's just so important. It all comes back. It all comes back.
Yeah, I love that. So I did want to wrap up, but first, since you mentioned about giving back, I did want to say, and show the beautiful cover again. This book actually does give back as well, not just through story, but it also benefits Young Adult Survivors United, which is an organization in Southwestern PA that helps support young adults going through cancer, which is very important because a lot of times they feel alone. They need assistance. So this is a group that does that. So some of the royalties from this book actually go straight to YASU. So we're very happy about that. That's the charity that the authors voted on and selected that. So that was what they wanted to do with the money. Denise, I had one last question for you.
Okay.
So if you could leave everybody with a message from your chapter, what is it you want them to take away from it?
Although it feels like the end of the world at the time when something happens, life goes on. You'll get past it. You won't forget it, but you will get past it. Grief is a terrible thing. Sometimes it's hard to get through, but you will get through it.
Beautiful message. Thank you again for being with me. If anybody is watching live and has questions, comments, please be sure you drop them in the comments. We will get to them. If you're watching it afterwards, we will happily answer your questions then too.
Yes.
Thank you to everybody who watched, and make sure you get a copy of Unleashing Your Soul Level Magic. There it is again. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, the ebook or the paperback version. Thank you, Denise, for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.